distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to 2022 KDI Global Forum on Development Cooperation. My name is Kim Dae. I've been given the honor of being your MC today. Well, first of all, we would like to express our deepest gratitude to all of you for joining us here at the physical venue and also participating online. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let us start the opening ceremony of 2022 KDI Global Forum. To start us off, it is my great honor to invite Acting President Young-sun Ko of the Korea Development Institute for his opening remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome him with a big round of applause.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Acting President Ko Young-sun of KDI. First of all, I would like to welcome you all to 2022 KDI Global Forum, held under the theme of Digital Policies and Global Cooperation for Sustainable Development. It's an honor to have you today. Especially, I would like to thank Mr. Tetsushi Sonobe, Dean of Asia Development Bank Institute, representatives, academia, research, embassy in Korea. The pandemic is now phasing out, and we are now coming out of the tunnel. But before we are fully out of the tunnel, we are facing multiple challenges: disruptions in supply chain, Ukraine and the Russian war, and energy price spike. OPEC Plus decision to slash the production of oil is sending the prices skyrocketing. And there are concerns about stagflation as well. The government is in a position to be extremely cautious about making policies. But we are seeing glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel. First of all, international collaboration for carbon neutrality is enhancing. And with the expansion of digital technology, information flow is accelerating, and new industries and new jobs are being created. Global supply chain is being streamlined, changing the flow of international foreign direct investment. And many companies and countries around the world are taking this as a new platform, stepping stone for leapfrogging, and many countries are interested in digital transformation. Digital transformation is more than just an instrument of connecting people to people. It can create resources, manage, use, and distribution of the digital resources can be done in a different manner. Digital transformation will increase the productivity, efficiency of industries, and it will improve the quality of services and create new social value. By optimizing the usage of resources, we can reduce the greenhouse gas emission and trace the expansion or spread of diseases. But this creates digital divide, and there could also be digital polarization among the countries. In order to resolve digital divide, we need to work together. Today, we are going to be hearing from speakers from Australia, ASEAN, and they will share their digital economic cooperation and policy directions. I hope we can have in-depth discussions about sustainable development and pave the way for further collaboration in this field. I would like to thank all the government agencies, public institutions, academia, public institutions for giving us the support to host the KDI Global Forum this year. I would like to once again thank everyone for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ko, for your kind words. And also thank you for hosting today's forum as we can discuss the role of digital policy as the important driver of sustainable development. Thank you. And next, we are going to have a keynote speech delivered by Mr. Tetsuchi Sonobe, Dean and CEO of the Asian Development Bank Institute. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome him with a big round of applause.
Good morning, everyone. So, let me start. So, Young-sun Ko, Acting President, KDI, John Curry, Vice President of KDI, and John Kim, Executive Director, the Center for International Development, and Ji-Yang Choi, Director, International Cooperation, Economic Cooperation and Strategy. division. Then Ministry of Finance and Economy, and then Ji-hee Yoon, the Senior Research Associate. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a great pleasure and honor to speak here at this great forum. My name is Tetsushi Sonobe, the Dean and the CEO of Asian Development Bank Institute, which is the Tokyo-based think tank of Asian Development Bank. Actually, I came from Manila, although my institute is in Tokyo, but yesterday I had ADBI Advisory Council meeting and also across the board meeting with board members of ADB. Then I took a late night flight from Manila to Seoul, Incheon, and then I arrived in Incheon around 4 a.m. But somehow my document had the error, and then I had to stay at the immigration office for 2 hours. So I didn't sleep, so that maybe I threw a little bit slowly, but forgive me. So world global economy had a negative economic growth in 2020, which was the first in the history. So we see how big the COVID-19's impact on global economy was. And then 2021, the global economy grew about 6%, but maybe this year it will go down to 2.7% or so, according to IMF. And the IMF has been revising the forecast downward repeatedly. So maybe that would be a more accurate, revised version would be the more accurate prediction, but that revision will have, unfortunately, can have negative impact, because if IMF says global economy becomes bad, then people postpone investment, postpone consumption, which will make the economy even worse. So this is a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. And then the big problem would be the slowdown of the economic growth of China. And then maybe the IMF prediction is 3.3%, but on the Asian Development Bank's prediction is about the same. But that would be maybe too much optimistic, and the reality would be lower. And then, so slowdown of Chinese economic growth will have huge impact in the region. And this is, just current problem, but we know that a bigger problem exists even before COVID-19. That's climate change. So climate change mitigation and adaptation will continue to be the big issue for the planet. And then in addition to that, there are geopolitical conflicts, and which triggered the global inflation and rising interest rate. And the rising interest rate will cause the outflow of capital from emerging economies, and also depreciation of currencies other than US dollars. And then the increasing interest rate makes developing country borrowers in a more and more difficult situation. So the debt management, debt sustainability is now one of the biggest issues for developing world. And in addition, the COVID-19 has maybe long-lasting scarring effect. Okay. So there are many that kind of effect. But one of them which I worry about most is the learning loss. So learning loss occurred due to the school closure for about 2 years. So in some developing countries, schools were closed for 100 weeks. So, and then in those schools, it was so difficult to provide online education. Okay, so that means real learning loss. But learning loss, of course, takes place after almost every major natural disaster or violent conflict. But that kind of learning loss is limited to particular part of the country. But learning loss due to the COVID-19 pandemic is worldwide. So for 2 years, the same cohort, same age, young people lost the opportunity to learn so basic learning skills. So which will have a huge impact for the world economy for many, many years to come. So I'm very sorry to be so pessimistic, but now I turn to the kind of more rosy aspect. So we know that to overcome these difficulties and to achieve the resilient recovery, and also in order to make the world economy and global supply chains more resilient to the crises, we need to have digitalization, more and more digitalization. So I think everybody agrees, because maybe have to go to the next page. So here is the example of digital divide. So let me skip this. So everybody knows that the extent of digitalization, which is measured in vertical axis, and the economic prosperity, which is measured in terms of GDP per capita on the horizontal axis. So there is upward sloping relationship, although it looks very much concave. But if you take a logarithm on the GDP per capita, you will see more straight line, more straight relationship. Anyway, the relationship is positive. So you have more digitalization, you will have higher income, or if you have higher income, you can go further toward digitalization. So there are, of course, bilateral causal relationships, and I don't assert that digitalization is the key for the economic development, but it is likely that close relationship. And then here is kind of projection, which is based on to look at note projections are based on assumed 20% expansion of the digital sector by 2025 will cause or maybe will be followed by 4.5 or 5% GDP growth in the world, and 6%, nearly 6% in Asia. And the trade will also expand, and also employment will increase in the world and also Asia. And then so digitalization will help a variety of sectors. So not only the GDP or that kind of macroeconomic indicators, but we will see lots of benefits of digitalization in different sectors. So, for example, health, and then disaster prevention and disaster recovery, financial services, market, and the non-agricultural enterprise, agriculture, government services, education. Yeah, so if you look at the rural economy, for example, digitalization can help the livelihood of farmers and the rural people in through variety of channels. So that will lead to the more inclusive economic development and growth. But the same thing, of course, happen in urban economy as well. So for both urban and rural economy, digitalization will have good impact. And then, どうなってんの? Oh, sorry. So a little more additional explanation how digitalization lead to good results now explained by these arrows and these outer circles. For example, in the case of disaster, so digitalization will provide prior information, and CGD can help to have the latest information of location, financial service. Using digital wallet, people can purchase and sell and invest and save. So even the many people there in the poor countries, there are many people who have no access to very basic banking services or financial services. But if they have mobile phone, smartphone, then they can have access to those services. And yeah, even in agriculture, so digitalization will provide information related to high-yielding seeds, latest farming technology, weather forecast, and in the countries in the poorest part of Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, just because of their mobile phone, they have very good market information. So before carrying the heavy sacks of the crops to marketplace, they know which marketplace will offer a higher price for their crops. So that helped farmers very much. That's why even farmers are very eager to adopt new technologies beyond the very simple mobile phone. So if they have a kind of financial opportunity, they would adopt the digital services and digital technologies. And about global or planet, green digital finance is going on, developing, and you can imagine the variety of channels through which digitalization will contribute to the sustainable development of the planet. And then digitalization will help the recovery of learning loss. And so this country, your country, is going ahead in terms of this digital education. So already your kids are receiving very nice education service. Right? But developing or emerging economies, now they are adopting the online education services. And then my institute is working together with the Indonesian government, Ministry of Education, to introduce high-touch, high-tech education, and to not the elite school, not a private elite school, but a public school, or very ordinary school, even in the rural areas. So the government is now distributing the very simple PC to junior high schools. And then, junior high school teacher, had been always, complaining or worrying about their students because their student is now 7th grade, but they don't understand what they should have learned in their 3rd grade. So many students are already dropped out from the normal course of learning. But teachers are so busy. Now the computer and artificial intelligence can help each student to catch up in their own speed. So now that kind of thing is happening even in rural area of Indonesia, and it will happen even poorer economies. And then not only education, but so many education about agriculture. So one of the main sources of the income inequality or wealth inequality is come from urban-rural divide. And then the disadvantage for rural people is what has been the difficult access to services which are readily available in urban areas. For example, farmers can escape from the hunger if their agricultural productivity is increased by adopting new or modern seeds or modern varieties, and also fertilizer and irrigation. But as long as they continue to produce very homogeneous crops like rice or wheat or rye, so which are not branded, but just rye or just rice, then the price is very low. About same as cost. So this is the world of really the perfect competition. Price is equal to marginal cost, and then the surplus or profit is very, very small. Right? So as long as they are producing that type of, or they are engaging in that kind of agriculture, they will not have hunger anymore, but they cannot be rich. Okay? So in order to escape from the poverty and in order to become rich, they have to differentiate their product, and then they have to learn marketing, and then the branding, and then also quality management. And then in urban areas, even the very small enterprises can receive that kind of services. And also they have access to that kind of knowledge. But in rural areas, it was so difficult because services are concentrated in urban areas. But digital technologies can bring that kind of missing knowledge and skill to rural areas. Okay? And if they don't know how to use such knowledge, marketing, or quality control, but they can, if they watch YouTube, they can quickly understand. Right? So digital technology will help the farmers in poor countries as well. And then, there are lots of digital financial services which are very useful, and now the digital health is emerging, and then government services, e-portal kind of thing. And then in Korea, there is now Korea electronic travel authorization. And then that was trouble for me. So I put my passport number, I mistyped a little bit. And then I arrived in the Incheon airport, but the immigration officer found my passport number is wrong in this KETA. So then I was stuck in the immigration office for 2 hours this morning. So I'm a kind of victim of digitalization, but partly because my lack of digital skills and literacy. So, and then digital solutions for smart city development. Sorry, I went too much. Okay. Yes. So many things. So urban development also be boosted by digitalization, and even so environment. Do you know the term circular economy? So recycling, or not produce, consume, and throw the product away. We should use resources repeatedly in recycling, through recycling. But to do so, there must be a kind of nice recycling market. And then, whether, when the seller says, oh, this recycled product is still good, but consumers cannot be, convinced, and then the transaction doesn't take place. So to have a kind of assurance of quality, some tags in terms of digital form will help. Right? So that kind of transparency will be achieved through digitalization. But how many minutes do I have? 3 minutes? Yeah, something like that, I guess. So let's move to the. So I have talked about a kind of potential or opportunity that digitalization can bring to many economies, different sectors of economy. But now we have to talk about challenges. So challenges arising from digitalization. For example, just where to start? Yeah, of course, people worry about data privacy and or cyber risks. To cope with these problems, laws, rules, and regulations must be strengthened. Without that, people are always reluctant to go further into digitalization. Right? So that's a big problem, because people are moving now, like me, from Tokyo to Manila to Seoul. Right? And then if every country has different rules, it's very difficult. So harmonization of rules, but that's a kind of a big task for the government officers like her. And then let me skip this very difficult one, but for a digital divide, which is of course coming from the two problems. One is lack or shortage of necessary infrastructure, right? And then another is lack of digital skills and digital literacy. So a huge investment on the infrastructure, broadband and that kind of thing, must be carried out. So the international organizations, especially multilateral development banks, have to work very hard to mobilize the infrastructure investment funding. But of course, it's impossible to rely only on public funding. So how to mobilize private sector money, private sector capital is a big challenge for these financial sector people. And then digital skills, literacy, of course, lots of training is needed. Also, I need to take such training programs. Then this is also very challenging but exciting area for international cooperation. And then, Yeah, we are living in the platform age. So platform means there is one world and then another world. So producers, consumers, sellers, buyers, or researchers and government, and then in the middle, think tank. So think tank is also a platform working for different worlds. And then the nature of platform business is if the business help one world better, then that will benefit the other world, right? So if the e-commerce provide better service for sellers, then lots of sellers come, and then this another world of buyers will benefit from the huge variety from which the consumers, buyers can choose. So in that sense, attracting lots of buyers and for that purpose providing good services attracting lots of sellers, and then for that purpose the platform will provide nice services to sellers, but that also help and benefit the buyers. So and then vice versa. So this is our nature, right? So that means if we provide the nice training to the people in developing countries, poor country, that will help the people in the richer countries. So and the richer countries become better, and then poorer countries become also better. So we are living in that kind of world. So more and more international cooperation is necessary and also desirable. And then the monopolization of market, but because of this nature of platform business, and also the platform business can collect data, right? And then using data, they can do bigger business. So there is kind of scale economies, or expand the variety of services. Many people benefit. That's why providing benefit means provider can have some more and more profit, and then they will invest further, and then they will become bigger, and then provide greater variety of services in larger scale. So there is this kind of snowball effect or scale economy effect. So that will lead to monopolization eventually. So how to prevent all the negative things arising from monopoly is a big challenge. So the competition policy and also taxation. And then here is taxation. So BEPS means, as you know, base erosion and profit shifting, right? So even before the world of the age of digitalization, the big multilateral companies could shift their profit to the low tax rate countries or tax havens. And then by doing so, they didn't pay any tax, right? But now, this digital world means those service providers can provide service from beyond from another country, and then they may not have any offices in Korea, but the services are coming, and then the consumers in Korea are paying price to the service providers. But because there is no offices or factories in Korea, Korean tax authority cannot get any tax. So in addition to the previous type of profit shifting, now this digital world makes gives tax authority people big headache. So that's the problem of BEPS. So now the international cooperation of taxation is happening. So, and then this must be strengthened. And then very simple I forgot to add one very simple challenge is that even we develop a nice infrastructure and then also training and then solve the digital divide. Well, eventually, for example, in the case of e-commerce, there are lots of goods must be delivered. So to deliver, you need transportation. So the problem of the lack of transportation infrastructure in poorer areas and poorer countries remain. Or the problem will become even bigger because they can place order much easily now. But goods are not coming, then the problem is now bigger. So in that sense, huge investment is needed. Again, how to finance and how to reduce the investment cost will be the big problem. So there are lots of issues about, in order to get the fruit of digitalization. So that's why my proposal of policy direction is obviously we have to work together and very hard to solve these challenges. Thank you very much. I stop here.
Thank you so much for.
네, 감사합니다. 손오배 수장님. 디지털화와 관련된 정책.
Let us move on to the special session under the theme of Digital Economic Cooperation in the Asia-Pacific region. We are going to hear from 3 speakers in this special session. And first, please allow me to introduce Mr. Ben Kass, Acting Assistant Secretary of the Digital Trade and New Technologies Branch of the Free Trade Agreement and Stakeholder Engagement Division of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Australia. Each speaker will be given 10 minutes. Please stick to the time limit. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome him with a big hand.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for inviting me along. If we could move to the next slide, please. Can you hear me okay? Yep, okay. Today, I wanted to provide a brief overview of Australia's experience and views on regional digital trade cooperation. Firstly, why we're interested in digital trade. Secondly, some background on our reasonably new digital trade strategy. And thirdly, as an example of our cooperation in the region, a short overview of our ASEAN Digital Trade Standards Initiative. Next slide, please. First, I think it's worth asking the question, what is digital trade? This question often comes up, even with our trading partners. We see some partners taking a fairly narrow view, for example, limiting digital trade to e-commerce, so traditional electronic commerce, while other trading partners might take a broader view. For Australia, we usually take an open approach to the definition, preferring the definition of digital trade not to be limited in scope or time. And this is particularly because digital trade issues can evolve very quickly. So narrow definitions, and particularly where specific technologies might be involved, can quickly become outdated. That said, for Australia, we broadly think about digital trade as including goods sold over the internet, so through e-commerce platforms, digital content, including software, music, films, apps, and digitally enabled services, including consultancy services, legal services, education services. We also think about digital trade as including electronic facilitation of trade, such as through digital single windows and digital trade documents. And finally, and one that we hear about quite a lot these days, the transmission of data across borders. Data flows are seen as, I guess, one of the most central enablers of business across borders these days. Next slide, please. So why does digital trade matter to Australia? I think as the previous presentation showed, the growth in digital trade is happening quite quickly. Modern trade is increasingly achieved through digital technology. The global economy is more connected and integrated than at any point in history. and the use of digital tech is enabling trade is becoming more and more important, not just to Australia's economy, but the global economy. The COVID era has only underscored the importance of digital trade by accelerating the uptake of digital technologies and trading opportunities as well. For us, digital trade provides opportunities for businesses to reach new consumers and markets. And this is particularly important for small and medium-sized enterprises because of the effect that digital trade has on lowering entry cost to markets and the opportunity to reach new markets. For example, through the adoption of cloud computing and centralised data processing. But digital trade is not just about businesses as well. Digital trade also enables consumers to benefit by participating in new markets and accessing new products, and thereby increasing their purchasing choice and their convenience. Now, we can all see these effects day to day, but in tandem with the growth of digital trade and the opportunities that it has to offer, we've also seen an increase in the importance of establishing consistent, high-quality and trade-facilitating rules to support the growth of digital and digitally enabled trade. Next slide, please. So with increasing commercial reliance on digital technology and opportunities, it's important that there are frameworks in place to enable digital trading the digital trading modality. And one way that we can do that is through digital trade rules. Digital trade rules provide certainty, stability, and build trust in the online environment, enabling innovation and growth. Digital trade rules also help to counter rising global protectionism and support an open, secure, and free internet. And more broadly, engagement on digital rules supports Australia's broader interests in maintaining the global rules-based order, which for an economy like Australia is incredibly important and something that we have benefited from substantially over many decades. Next slide, please. So it's in this context that I've just described, that is, the growth of the digital economy and the recognition of the need for strong international frameworks that led Australia to develop a digital trade strategy. It was released in April of this year, and the strategy provides a framework for Australia to maximise economic growth by shaping an enabling environment for digital trade. It guides Australia's practical actions as a leader in digital trade. It informs our work to develop digital trade rules and to deliver commercial benefits and to push back against rising digital protectionism. Next slide, please. In terms of our digital trade rules, the strategy highlights a number of areas that we aim to pursue in our agreements. First, we seek to pursue commitments that allow for cross-border data flows and rules that seek to prohibit data localisation requirements. Second, we seek to include rules focused on building trust to ensure that consumers are more confident about shopping online or using online services. So those might be around the protection of personal information and privacy. Thirdly, we seek to include provisions on digital trade cooperation, for example, cooperation in the areas of cybersecurity or digital identities. And finally, we seek rules that facilitate trade by digital means, including through commitments on accepting electronic trade documentation, electronic signatures, electronic invoicing, and electronic payments. As an example of these, our digital economy agreement with Singapore covers all of these areas and is what we would consider to be our gold standard set of digital trade rules. Next slide, please. More broadly, the digital trade strategy provides a framework for, for how Australia should engage in the international space. In essence, it sets out three forms of engagement. Firstly, advocating for digital trade liberalisation, standards and regulatory cooperation with our international partners and through participation in international fora. For example, Australia is co-convener, along with Japan and Singapore, of the WTO Joint Statement Initiative on E-commerce. We're actively engaged in international standard-setting bodies, and we engage in extensive bilateral cooperation on technical and regulatory issues. For example, our DEA includes a number of technical memoranda of understanding. Secondly, we negotiate agreements for digital trade rules and commitments in our bilateral, regional and plurilateral agreements. and explore how the digital trade rules can be made more consistent. So examples of those are our answer to upgrade negotiations and the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. And thirdly, we support implementation of digital trade rules through capacity building projects and supporting Australian businesses trade overseas. And the focus on capacity building recognises that some partners in the region need help to make the most of the digital economy opportunities. Next slide, please. To highlight one example of this last point on cooperation, I wanted to touch briefly on Australia's standards cooperation. Why do we focus on standards? We see standards as crucial instruments and are committed to promoting the understanding, development and use of standards, especially in the Indo-Pacific. We engage in dialogues and we pursue rules on digital standards. And we engage in several bilateral programs in the region to help our partners better understand and engage on standards. Fundamentally, where trading partners can use the same standards, especially as a basis for technical regulations, then this can help facilitate smoother trade through interoperability, reliability, efficiency, and transparency. On the other hand, inconsistent national standards can result in trade distorting effects and trade inefficiencies. So at a broad level, we encourage active participation by international partners in standard setting bodies, noting Australia's active participation in the ISO. We also looked at how we can best share our views and experiences, including engaging industry, and we encourage the consideration of how we can collectively overcome barriers imposed by inconsistent standards, regulations and conformity assessment. A specific example of this is the ASEAN-Australia Digital Trade Standards Initiative, which was a leaders level initiative announced during the Special Summit in 2018. Next slide, please. Through the initiative, Australia is supporting ASEAN members to develop consistent technical systems which talk to each other, complementary regulatory and governance frameworks to avoid incompatibilities across the region. And we are supporting ASEAN members to maximise the benefit of the growth potential of digital trade through a regional approach, addressing and doing trade as a region. Some of the workshops and activities have included a focus on ensuring that ASEAN digital trade environment is inclusive and consistent with global standards in the areas including digital financing and security and supply chains. For one example, on digital payments, despite the rapid growth of digital payment transactions, penetration in most countries in ASEAN is under 40%, and a large portion of the underbanked and underserved population are women. Our initiative included a workshop looking at the evidence base for policies and regulations across the region, and then looked at how digital payments could be made more accessible for women. As a second example, the program looked at e-invoicing, which offers numerous benefits to businesses of all size, including increased efficiencies, reduced costs, and faster payments. The program provided a report on how e-invoices are currently being facilitated across ASEAN, best practice examples, and the economic impact and benefits of using e-invoicing. Next page, next slide. In conclusion, the Digital Trade Standards Strategy and the ASEAN Digital Trade Standards Initiative are just two examples of how Australia is seeking to engage on digital trade cooperation in the region and globally. Happy to take any questions, and thank you for having me today.
Thank you very much for giving us the presentation. You have underscored the importance of cooperation and partnership for consistent digital trade standards. Thank you. And next, Professor Hee-Jin Lee from the Graduate School of International Studies of the Yonsei University will give us his presentation. Please welcome him with a big round of applause.
예, 안녕하십니까?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Professor Hee-Jin Lee from the Graduate School of International Studies at Yonsei University, and I'm also in charge of Center for International Standardization at Yonsei University. And today I would like to talk about ASEAN-Korea standards cooperation. This is the outline or the agenda of my presentation. First, I'll talk about why we need to cooperate for standards. And as Mr. Ben Kass has said, We have already understood what digital standards are, so I would like to add to his comments. And I will also talk about the standards cooperation in ASEAN countries. And the Australian cases are very important in this context. And then I will briefly talk about a way forward for Korea. Then first, why we need cooperation for standards, especially when we are cooperating with emerging countries. I will talk about the case of ASEAN. One of the most important vision-related documents would be Master Plan on ASEAN Connectivity 2025. One of the vision mentioned in the document is a seamlessly and comprehensively connected and integrated ASEAN. Seamless, this word itself already embeds standardization. Without standard, there will be no connection. So for regional integration or single market development, standards are always embedded at the most fundamental level. And we have also heard about this in the EU context as well. Standards is also one of the most important indices or standards of economic growth. Emerging nations must get accustomed to standards in order to grow their economy. And this is also a very important instrument of innovation and learning for emerging nations. Especially recently, we are experiencing smartization of everything. As the keynote speaker, Mr. Sonobe, has mentioned, digital standardization is increasingly becoming important for ASEAN nations. And for smart cities, which is a system of systems, in fact, because in the past, transportation, sewage, water, safety, security, all of these systems were developed separately. But smart city concepts integrates all of them into one. And one of the most fundamental conditions needed here would be standardization of data. Without standardization, data will emerge as a major barrier. So ASEAN nations are carrying out standardization, and it's especially important for digitalization. And standards are most basic instrument for trade, because trade standards will improve interoperability and it will reduce trade barriers. So between ASEAN and Korea, if they can use common standards, it will facilitate trade and investment between the two regions. In today's context, I would like to emphasize the importance of international collaboration for technical standards. There is the technology hegemony competition between the United States and China, and standards have been upgraded to strategic geopolitical issues. So digital standards and digital commerce is in dire need of international collaboration. Many international collaboration bodies like IPEF and Quad. So in these international frameworks, all of they emphasize the importance of standards. So standards are always a part of international cooperation, and the role of Korea and emerging nations is going to be all the more important. These days, emerging countries are not expressing strong voice in standardization bodies because of lack of skills at the moment. But when it comes to discourse for digital standardization, it's becoming a competition of discourse. In order to gain legitimacy, it's important to work together with emerging nations and For South Korea to actively participate in international rule setting, we need to work together with many countries, and by working with ASEAN nations, we can have a same voice or common voice with emerging nations in international standardization body. And in 2019, in special summit meeting between Korea and ASEAN nations, standardization was mentioned as a very important part of cooperation. So let me talk about the current status of standard cooperation with ASEAN. So EU from early 2000 has taken a leading role based on their own experience of integrating with other EU countries. They have gone through their errors, trials and errors, going through standardization at the EU level. So EU, in order to pass their experience to other nations, has been actively engaged in standard cooperation with ASEAN nations. They're carrying out a RISE program, and the United States is also carrying out IGNITE initiative, ASEAN USAID Inclusive Growth in ASEAN, through innovation, trade, and e-commerce. It aims to implement standards, rules, and procedures that are harmonized with international standards. And as Mr. Benkas from Australia has mentioned, ASEAN-Australia Digital Standards Initiative is also being carried out. And I think this is the case in point, especially for today's context. In digital commerce, harmonization of standardization is really critical to promote collaboration, and the two sides can reduce the cost of import, export, and trade. And for Korea, the Ministry of Commerce, Trade, and Industry has the vision to continue to carry out cooperation program with ASEAN for standardization, and it is called ISCP, International Standards Infrastructure Cooperation Program, which has been running since 2011, especially in the area of technical assistance program. So it aims to enhance standards capacity and strengthen cooperative relationships with standard organization of ASEAN partner countries. I won't go into the details of all the budgets, but this program, compared to the three other programs that I have mentioned, ISCP is at a very small level in terms of budget, and ISCP also continues to incorporate digital discussion, but it is relevant to construction materials or other conventional industries. So in accommodating digitalization or digital transformation, ISCP must be expanded and evolved in terms of its scope. Let me talk about the way forward for Korea, especially ASEAN-Korea standardization collaboration. In 2019, there was ASEAN ROK Commemorative Summit, and one of the joint declarations from this summit included the establishment of ASEAN-Korea Standardization Joint Research Center. And a lot of preparation has been made so far, but because of the COVID-19, a lot of the efforts have been delayed. But now we are trying to recover these efforts, and taking the momentum, we are going to create Korea ASEAN Standard Network. And then we are also going to create ASEAN-Korea Standard Cooperation Community. This is because international competition over standardization is becoming very fierce. And as Korea prepares to join IPEF, We have to be the leader of establishing the norms instead of just following the given norms. And Korea has the capacity to establish the norms and standards. But standardization is highly politicized these days. And recently, the head of ISO has been a Korean man has been in charge of ISO recently. And the power for Korea is definitely becoming stronger. So in order to leverage this moment, we have to work together effectively with ASEAN member countries. And for that, we need to create a dialogue forum. That's why I want to use this standardization community. And for digital standardization, digital commerce, we need to create some kind of short-term digital training curriculum or organization, probably at the graduate school level. And I want to emphasize the importance of collaboration with ASEAN nations for standardization. And ANU in Australia, Tech Policy Center, and KDI are going to start the project for standard harmonization between Korea and Australia. And that could also serve as a best practice model for collaboration with ASEAN member nations as well. So I hope you can give us support and interest so that Korea can be one of the rule setters in the world. And developing technical standardization will give you an edge going forward. So Korea, ASEAN, and Australia, I hope we can work together effectively over standardization. Thank you very much.
Professor Lee, we were able to realize the significance of standards cooperation and how it has been carried out so far and a way forward. Thank you. Last but not least, Assistant Director Siberam Suparamanian of the Digital Economy Division of ASEAN Secretariat will deliver the presentation. Please welcome him with a big round of applause.
Hello, a very good morning to everyone. My name is Sibaram Subramaniam. Let me just project my slide so that everyone can see. Can you all see my slide? All right. Thank you. So again, very good morning to everyone. As you all see, I'm from the ASEAN Secretariat. The topic of my presentation today will be very much focusing on ASEAN digital economy, where some areas which I think Ben Kass and Professor Hee-jin has mentioned, I will not touch about it, right? So the table of content, what I'll be presenting is on two main areas. Number one is what are the key opportunities within ASEAN digital economy integration? I think we have progressed very well in the last 2 years, right? As well as while we have progressed, we also have some challenges and what are those challenges all about? And then moving forward, in addition to what Ben has mentioned and also Professor Hee-jin has mentioned, we have also other focus areas and priorities, which I will quickly run through in this slide. So let's talk about first. So we all know COVID-19 has accelerated the digitalization globally as well in ASEAN. So if you look on the screen on your left, I hope you can see my mouse here, right? For the last, from the period of 2015 to 2019, for a period of 5 years, right, we had 100 million new internet users. But this was before COVID, right? So back then we thought this was an exponential growth. But when COVID happened, right, within a period of 2 years, which is 2020 to 2021, we managed to get 80 million new internet users. And that's a huge growth, whereby out of these 80 million internet users, within 2 years, right, 60 million of the internet users are digital consumers. What does digital consumers mean? These are people who actually, what Ben Kass was saying, those who are actually do some form of digital trade. Either they do e-commerce, either they purchase services, they do digital enabled services, and so forth. right? So within 2 years, we already have 60 million digital consumers. Now, because of the huge growth of digital consumers in the last 2 years, and we are expecting that this is going to be a norm where it will not reduce, what is expected from some of the research papers that we have got to know, by 2025, the digital economy driven by digital consumers will hit 363 billion of gross merchandise value, right? So where does this 365 billion comes about? It comes from four main sectors: e-commerce, transport, food, online travel, and online media. And among all these four, e-commerce will be the highest contribution. So what you see is 2025 is going to contribute 64% of this 363, and on a year-to-year basis, the growth will be double or more than double. Now, since e-commerce is going to drive the development of digital finance, right, what will happen is the dominance of cash is going to reduce over time. So you can see before 2019, or even in 2019, it was dominated by cash in 60%. What is anticipated by 2025, 47% of it cash going to reduce, and 53% of it got to do with digital financial services. Right? So when you talk about digital financial services, these are your cards, account to account, and what is the biggest growth that we are seeing is e-wallet. I think this is something that in line that what Ben Cars also mentioned in digital trade, right? Digital payment is going to be the next big thing. So with that huge growth, what's going to happen is what is predicted by 2030, right? The digital economy is going to contribute 1 trillion of GMV by 2030, and out of the 2/3 of 1 trillion is going to come from e-commerce. Yeah. So realizing this huge growth and the huge opportunity, this is where if you see the ASEAN member states, the 10 ASEAN member states, has actually embarked into their own digital economy strategy, right? So each of them have their own strategy, which focus on three main areas, namely number one on e-government, number two talks about the digitalization of key sectors, and number three, how does ASEAN can move into digital society. Yeah. So now I just have one slide for key challenges. So as we have progressed a lot in the last 2 years, right? But there's a lot more can be done, right? There's a lot more we need to do, right? So we did a study which was completed in, which was adopted in 2021, which is called ASEAN Digital Integration Index study, right? And this index focuses on four main challenges in ASEAN, which is the infrastructure, data protection, cybersecurity, digital payment, digital identity, trade, logistic, entrepreneurship, and digital skills. Now, when we look at this data, how we have progressed as of in 2020 or beginning of 2021, we noticed that we have done some fairly well in terms of infrastructure readiness, right? But having said that, there are some gaps, or there is still a huge gap where it comes to digital infrastructure at the rural areas, where there are issues or people or industry having connectivity issues, mainly on the rural areas. Now, data protection, cybersecurity, we are embarking into, we do have a cybersecurity strategy. We do have a data protection framework, governance framework, personal data framework, but there's a lot more we can do in terms of promoting trust and safety. Digital payment, we have embarked into a lot of initiatives, but it's still at the nascent stage. A lot more can be done, which what Ben was mentioning a few things on, and also I think Professor Hejin also mentioned about this. Now, what is really important is what we are really lacking, or which is below the average of ASEAN, is these three areas, which is digital trade, innovation, entrepreneurship, and digital skills. The biggest gap or the issue that we have is digital skills, whereby most ASEAN countries, they are 97% or more than 97% are MSMEs, and all these are native speakers, right? So there's a huge issues in terms of digital skills, where there's a lot of initiatives which I'll present in shortly. So in short, that's about where ASEAN now, and also what are the key challenges. Now let me move on to the ASEAN digital economy focus areas and what are our priorities. So in order for us to further accelerate for us to keep in par with what the other economies or other regions are going. Last year, ASEAN leaders actually set a vision on ASEAN digital economy, which is called Bandar Sri Begawan Roadmap. Now, this Bandar Sri Begawan Roadmap, what it does is we actually consolidate all initiative under ASEAN, digital initiative ASEAN, under a single document, so that we will put an end to the silo approach of ASEAN digital cooperation, not only within ASEAN Secretariat, but also among the member states of the different digital initiatives they're doing, right? But what is very important, for the very first time, the leaders has come and say that they need to have a digital economy framework agreement at the regional level. Now, as far as I know, we are one of the very first in the region who is actually embarking into digital economy framework. The rest of them, a lot of them, they have a bilateral digital agreement framework, but not that I know that they have really have started negotiation in terms of digital economy framework agreement. So with that, for us to embrace into the journey of digital economy, our approach has been three broad approaches. And let me just qualify this. These are not exhaustive, right? These are some of the things that I would like to highlight today, in addition to what Ben Kars and also Professor Ejin has mentioned, right? Now, as a holistic approach, in a broad approach which cut across many sectors and so on, we have the Bandar Sri Begawan Roadmap, which is the ASEAN Digital Transformation Agenda. We also have the ASEAN Digital Master Plan. We focus very much on digital infrastructure and digital ID, right? On cybersecurity, we also have ASEAN Cybersecurity Cooperation Strategy. Now, these are, again, not exhaustive. We also have plans on what Professor Hejin mentioned. We also have plans on digital standards. We also have plans on digital skills. We also have plans on digital, payment, which we are actually working very closely with Korea as well as Australia on some of these initiatives. Now, at a sectoral level, we have this ASEAN consolidated strategy on fourth industry revolution. As the whole world is now moving towards industry revolution, we do have on a strategy on this, which focus on technology governance. How does e-government embrace technology, right? Digital economy, some of the sectors that embrace digital economy, and of course, how do we transform into digital society? Now, like I mentioned earlier, 95 to 97% or more of our industries are MSMEs. So we also focus a lot on the enterprise level support, right? So this is where we have, in terms of digital skills, we have the SME, ASEAN SME Academy and Go Digital ASEAN, right? Now, the difference between this, how uniquely we are doing this, most of the content of this particular two initiative comes from the private sector. That's number one. And number two, these contents are very customized it's a multilingual, it's very customized into their respective AMS language. Because the main challenge that we feel in MSMEs, the digital skills, most of them are native speakers, right? And a lot of content in the internet and digital solution, digital application, all are in English, right? So the basic issue is the perception, thinking that digital solution is expensive and complicated. Hence, most MSME does not want to embark into digital solution. But when we had this content, right, which is very much customized, driven by the private sector and very much customized into their native language, right, we noticed there's a huge demand. As of now, we have version 1 and version 2, we have 100,000 registered users. Go Digital as well, we have at the micro level enterprise, we help the job seekers. So far, 77% with this initiative have moved into, out of 180,000, have moved their business into online, whereas job seekers, more than 40,000 have managed to be employed, 58% managed to employ within 2 months and less. Now, while the first two is very much focused on online learning, right, we also have information and online portal which talks about trade and market access, which talks end-to-end, which talks about what are the information in terms of market access. We also do a lot of virtual matchmaking events, webinars, and online networking. And how do we really strengthen? So we do a lot of public-private dialogues, and how do we strengthen the policies, the regulation, the underlying laws which impede the growth of digital adoption among the ASEAN countries. Now, these are some of the key focus areas in digital economy, and most of this has been, or some of this has been already been mentioned by Benkas as well as Professor Izin, right? So the first thing is digital trend, trade and standards, which was mentioned by the previous speakers, right? So basically, when you talk about digital trade, we do have this ASEAN single window, right, which has been there for over the last 2 decades, where it focused very much on trade and custom processes and documents, automation of these two custom documents. Now, as we've been very successful in custom documents, we are moving towards agriculture, which focus on e-phyto and e-health and e-animal. Now, the question now is within digital trade, like what Ben Kass has presented, what else can we use ASEAN single window at the center and move towards other areas that, for example, digital logistic, what kind of documents can we exchange? Digital finance, what kind of document can we exchange? So we are looking into that. We are also looking, as Professor Ejin has mentioned, in terms of globally acceptable standards, which is interoperable in many technical platforms. So many AMS have different platforms, different systems, and so on. We don't intend to harmonize all those systems, but what we intend to do at a regional level is to make sure a solution which is interoperable, which is able to connect with all these different systems, different applications, different platforms, and able to talk to each other. Now, the second part is digital payment, which also was touched about by Ben, right? At this point of time, we are going into the retail, real-time retail payment, very much focused on ASEAN interoperable cross-border retail payment, which is very much focused on QR payment code. At this point of time, countries we have a bilateral agreement. Countries like Singapore and Thailand have already gone live. We are also going live in terms of Singapore and Indonesia, Singapore and Malaysia, and so on. Now, one of the other areas is digital identity, where as the businesses move into the digital economy, digital world, each of them we need to have a unique business identity, right? So this is something is our focus area as well, which we are doing a study on this. Then the part of cybersecurity and data protection, we do have what we call a good strategy to look into this. I'm currently in Singapore attending the Cyber Week, which is going on for the last 2 days, and we met a lot of dialogue partners. AMS came up with very good policy decisions, which I foresee that in the next few years going to really move the needle in the area of cybersecurity and data protection. And finally, last but not the least, is the digital skills and statement talent, which I presented earlier, the various initiatives that we are doing. So that's my short presentation. I hope I've kept to my 10 minutes time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We experienced a huge growth of digital economy, but at the same time, tasks are given to us to address emerging issues and challenges. And Mr. Sibaram shared some of the approaches as well. Thank you very much. We appreciate all the speakers for sharing your knowledge and insights. And before we move on to the next session, I would like to invite all the distinguished guests to take a commemorative photo. So distinguished guests, please join me up on the stage for a commemorative photo. Please. I believe that a photo of us will be a great tool to capture this invaluable moment to keep in our memory. Let us take the photo without your masks. So please join me up on the stage for a commemorative photo. And we are going to take 2 rounds of photos. So on count of 3, please look at the camera, show your big smiles. Cheese. 1, 2, 3. Smile. Thank you. And for the next photo, why don't we give a big round of applause to each other, shall we? For the big success of today's forum. Thank you very much. Please return to your seat and we will take a quick break of 10 minutes. So please be back at 11 a.m. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Speaker presentation and roundtable discussion will be followed, so please enter the hall and take your seat. Thank you. Next, we will proceed with the speaker presentation under the theme of Role of the Government and Industry for Green and Digital Economy. For this session, we are going to hear from three renowned experts. First, Eun-hye Jang, Senior Research Fellow of the Korea Legislation Research Institute, will give us the presentation. Please welcome her with a warm round of applause.
예, 안녕하십니까. 한국법제연구원
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Eun-hye Jang from Korea Legislation Research Institute. So the title of my presentation is Legislation and Transformation for Green Digital Economy. And I will make the presentation with a focus on smart green industrial complex. And this is an initiative that's taking place in Korea. Smart green industrial complex is unique to Korea. There is no similar case in other countries. So it started in Korea and it's still undergoing. So we have not completed the technology and we do not have a very clear concept at this point in time. But I thought smart green industrial complex was the most relevant case that I could use to talk about green digital economy. So this is the contents. I will talk about three things. First, I'll talk about green digital economy and government's role. And second, I will talk about the smart green industrial complex. And then third, I will talk about the status and future prospects of legislation in Korea for green and digital economy transformation. First, government's role in transition to green digital economy. Green digital economy. This includes environment-friendly technologies and advanced technologies coming together. This is one of the major challenges or tasks included in the Korean version of New Deal. We need deregulation and stronger regulation considered simultaneously. And this is where the government's leadership is strongly required. There are some highly unexpected problems that could arise in green digital economy, and that would require deregulation. In Korea, we are introducing various scenarios for deregulation. But on the other hand, by adding green economy, when we are transitioning to green economy, probably we need stronger and heavier regulations. So if we are going for eco-friendly economic structure, we need to strengthen monitoring of pollution, emission, and we need to introduce new management system. So green plus digital economy transition would require the Korean government to review all of its policy options and streamline them. There are some regulations that need to be removed, and there are some regulations that should be introduced or made more strict. Smart green industrial complex is one of the best practice cases for transition to green digital economy. But this is still in the planning stage. So please take it as a vision for our future vision. Around the world, because of the climate change, there are changes made to international norms and regulations because development that pollutes the environment is no longer needed, and industries need to respond to this kind of international trend. Smart green industrial complex. This is a picture that is included in the website of Korea Industrial Complex Corporation. And existing industrial complex focused merely on strengthening the manufacturing capacity of the industries, but they began proposing smart infrastructure complex requiring digital infrastructure construction and creating a new industry and support for startups. And by adding green portion, this is going beyond smartization of individual companies, and this requires smartization of industrial complex. Green New Deal, Digital New Deal can be supported in this kind of smart industrial complex. It could combine logistics, supervision, or monitoring and create green industrial complex. The challenge here is that this green industrial complex is only in the beginning stage. So it's not a complete or finished case for green digital economy transition. But I think it is a great vision that can clearly show the role of industries in digital and green transition. And I think it could work for around the world. So even though it's still in the planning and initial implementation stage, I think it is worthwhile talking about it. And smart green industrial complex includes Green New Deal, Digital New Deal portion. In economy transition, digital and green should go together because of many reasons. Korea and emerging countries need sustainable development. In this context, they can no longer pursue economic growth in a conventional manner. They need to pursue green and digital growth. Since I'm a researcher for legislation, I would like to talk about the current status of legislation for smart green industrial complex. Why do we have to talk about the law at this point in time? Legislation can provide the basis for deregulation or heavier regulation. For digital transformation in Korea, we have various laws like Framework Act on Carbon Neutrality and Green Growth for coping with climate crisis. And there is Framework Act on Carbon Neutrality that defines policy measures for green growth, and this is one of the basic laws for developing cluster and complexes of green technologies and green industries. And we also have Industrial Site and Development Act, which offers the definition of smart green industrial complex. And we will have to continue to streamline various regulations and options and instruments. Through deregulation, we need to strengthen new growth momentum, but at the same time, for environmental aspect, we need to have stronger and stricter sets of regulations. The challenge here is daunting, and emerging countries are also going to face the same challenges. There are some existing industrial complex in Korea, and they pollute their environment and emit a lot of CO2. But the smart green industrial complex will have to resolve these issues. And industrial complex need to overcome their vulnerability to the environment pollution. I'm running out of time. The government should exercise streamlined regulations and funding measures. And when it comes to climate change related regulations, when it comes to our policies and legislations, we need to upgrade the overall level of our standards, especially for environment. We need to harmonize our regulations with the international standards, and the legislation should provide the basis for that. In Korea, companies and industries are already conforming to quite high level of standards, but it's important to have objective comparison to international standards to make sure there is no duplication or waste of efforts by the industries. So we need to know exactly where we are compared to the international standards. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you. We were able to realize the importance of the relevant act and regulation. Thank you. And next, Professor Konsu Park of the Department of Industrial Engineering from Seoul National University will give us the presentation. Please welcome him with a big hand.
To talk about recent challenges and opportunities in global value chain. 예, 초청 감사드립니다. 저는 서울대학교에 있는 박건수.
Hello everyone, I am Konsu Park. I am professor of Seoul National University. Title of my presentation is Recent Challenges and Opportunities in Global Value Chain. So far, global value chain has been quite successful, has been very efficient, and thanks to that, all of your business were very successful and consumers were able to enjoy a high quality. If you look at this clothes, about 5 to 6 countries have collaborated to produce a high quality clothes. So you can see that international collaboration or cooperation is critical. And there weren't any issues because of the free trade system, and also the social political systems were put behind. Economic benefits were foremost priorities. And global value chain has been really successful. So if you look at Samsung or Apple, you can see that their suppliers are more than 2,000, and more than 70 countries actually provide foundation so that Samsung or Apple, they build their own offices. Let me tell you one change that has happened. These challenges is giving a huge challenge once again to the global value chain. One of that is the natural disasters. You know that global supply chain are spread throughout the whole world, and some of the newses were not caught our eyes, but if you look at it, there were huge impact. For example, the natural disaster that hampered the smooth operations of the global value chain, or starting from the earthquake that happened like 10 years ago, or natural disasters that happened because of the climate crisis, have once again have given a huge detrimental impact to the global value chain. So the manufacturers have spent years building low-cost global supply chains, and natural disasters are showing them in a very delicate network. So this provided once again the importance of the global value chain. And more recently, you know that there has been huge fluctuations in the commodity prices, including crude oil prices, which has skyrocketed recently. And the changes and fluctuations in the production time, it has once again increased, and this can be regarded as another challenge. In case of Korea, where we heavily rely on export and import, fluctuation in the exchange rate and weakening Korean won has given once again a huge difficulties. Just few months ago, as you can see, that the Korean won has weakened while the dollar has become stronger than ever before, and we can no longer enjoy profit from the export and import because of these fluctuations in the foreign exchange rate. Once again, the income has been reduced, and you still remember 2008 when the global financial crisis occurred. The global financial crisis occurred due to the Lehman Brothers bankruptcy, and we are now talking about another rival of the global financial crisis. From the perspective of the supply chain, it's quite important because we need to understand whether the suppliers can safely and securely provide the things that we need. If the supplier go bankrupt, once again, not only we suffer, but also when we produce our product, we have to deliver to someone else or the another party, and then there could be some disruptions in the supply chain. On top of that, there could be some social or political forces toward the global value chain. Globally, most of the countries around the world, recently you can see that instead of working with the suppliers from different countries, nowadays manufacturers are trying to work with the suppliers located within their regions like NAFTA or EU or East Asia. East Asia means China, Korea, and Japan. And we have formed our own regional bloc, and this would come at a high efficiency cost. So instead of suppliers having scattered around the world, we are trying to have the suppliers working nearby our nations. So there are fewer options to substitute between the suppliers or buyers in case of the disruptions for the RVC. But these actually produce a price hike. So simplistically put it, so far, global value chain has been operated in a very efficient manner at an affordable price, but high quality products were possible. But as time goes by, providing the product at the right time has become quite challenging. Then all these challenges and issues that increase variability in the GVC call for, once again, the risk management. There are three major risks. First, the supply risk. When the suppliers causes some issues, then it could disrupt the supply chain. And if the demand fluctuate once again, then there could be a spike in the demand, and once again they could disrupt the GVC. And also there's another risk called operational risk. For example, if there are issues with the forecast, or if all the necessary parts and components are all sorted out so that the raw materials or the necessary equipment cannot be provided, then operation could face a huge challenge. So we believe that if we resolve supply and demand operational risk or well manage that, we can overcome the challenge. And not only the private companies, but also the governments are paying high attention to manage GVC. Because of the risk management has become important, the academia are trying to review which is the most optimum or most maximized way to build GVC. And there are two effects. We call this as a bullwhip effect or ripple effect. It was widely known 10 years ago. And whip effect means that demand order variabilities in GVC are amplified as they move up the chain. There's usually retailer. If you go up, eventually there is a producers, and also there is a distributor or wholesaler. And what we know right now is if a minor change happens down here, then we call this as going upward. And if you go closer to the manufacturers, then a small impact can turn into a major impact due to various reasons. This kind of effects can occur. And just remember that bullwhip effect can occur. More recently, due to the demand, not only there is a fluctuation, but also when suppliers have a certain issues, once again, a minor shock in the supplier can give a huge impact to the overall supply volume. We call this as a ripple effect. Ripple effect is defined as the impact of suppliers' disruption escalate when they move down the chain. So just like water drops become bigger and bigger, creating a ripple effect, supplier minor issues can become larger and larger, and we need to take preemptive measures to prevent this. Then policy-wise, how can we prevent that? There are three policy implications that we can apply on a step-by-step basis. First, applying proper risk mitigation strategies carefully, and when the first stage is completed, we can take a look at different level of the supply chain. So looking at every single step of the way of the supply chain, we can look at the whole map. So this is how we call the mapping the local and international players involved in essential logistic chains. And third is developing stress tests for essential supply chains. And we need to come up with a strategy to mitigate the risk. And mitigation strategy should be set out according to the probability and consequences of the risky events. On top, you can see the buffering. So buffering effect means stockpiling. So you have to keep the inventory, and when the issues happen, then you can use the stockpile product. Just looking at this, actually, it looks as if it's quite complicated to implement that. You don't know where and how or how much you need to stockpile the inventory. In that case, what kind of contract you need to write it down. You have to think about it, and to whom or how balanced are you going to distribute that. So here, quantitative basis analysis is necessary, so that you have to come up with what's the best way to distribute the product. On the lower, you can see that after stockpiling, because stockpiling strategy is very expensive strategy, and calculating the frequency of the event and also how important those frequency happens, you can once again make sure that these products are not stockpiled in advance, but rather you can buy it from time to time from different sources. And of course, there are minor or trivial events that aren't likely to happen, but just be prepared that this kind of effect might occur. So you have to come up with a strategy for that as well. So item by item, these are the things that you need to come up with. And if you build a certain system, then the next thing is, instead of responding to these kind of issues item by item, you need to make sure to provide a contingency plan to address these issues. As you can see here, this was mapped out by Bloomberg, and this is a tool that they have come up with, the mapping GVC network and players therein, and how the value chain is comprised, and basic information is provided by the Bloomberg. And you can make most of this. If they collect more data, you can understand who are the key players and which market is more important. And when you know that, you can be well prepared. And also, there are digital economy or digital technology that we've been talking about. If you apply here, then mapping out of the digital economy can be facilitated and be well built. And once you use that, you will enjoy a huge benefit. And if the mapping and the supply chain can be well built, definitely you can analyze that. For example, you can classify the key players, and if you understand the activity of the key players, you know that where you need to put your energy or efforts on. And on top of that, you can think about the stress test. And stress test means that you can consider about implementing a simple test. When there is an issue with the supply chain, when a company cannot exercise its own role because of the natural disasters or for any other things, then a certain supplier, how long can they survive or how long can they tolerate? Because until the full recovery, they might need some time. And you can do the simulations, you can calculate the huge impact and then be prepared for that. Or company-wise or country-wise, you can conduct this test. For example, you have to gather the information about the budget that you are spending or the losses, the level of the losses that you are causing. You can identify that as well. And this is the y-axis is about the budget. And if you don't use the budget, but there could be numerous companies that gave a huge impact, and through analysis like this, you can once again pay extra attention to a company or to a product that has been that you have had a challenge. And then the policy-wise or from the company's perspective, you can make sure to enable these companies or this product to use additional funding. So this test shows the stress test conducted by the Ford. And Ford become very confident about risk management. As you can see here, there's a pickup truck, here emblem. These were not produced, so they completed truck, but they weren't able to sell that. So this is another risk that they have to mitigate the risk. And you have to understand that these kind of issues might pop out, and to prevent it, you have to build a system to manage that. It has huge impact to Korea as well. So that's about the challenges and opportunities of my presentation. Let me give you a takeaway. Policies in general concerns only in a national context, while global value chain is actually a global issues. So international cooperation is extremely important more than anything else. As the previous speakers already mentioned, a specialized technology, if they become more commercialized, more generalized, then you need to make an extra effort to let people know about this, and thus by you can mitigate the risk. And second, AI or digital technology, you can input this, and then once again the visibility and also more generalized system can be built. And digital supplier policy recommendation was presented by myself some time ago, and I believe that each company needs to have such a policy recommendation, although it's quite difficult. Anyway, the risk mitigation system must be built, and we promise you that we'll continuously analyze and prepare for that. We don't have actual success case yet, and it's not easy to identify that in a way. In case of Korea, we can start right now and build the best practice. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Park, for suggesting us strategies to respond to recent challenges of the global value chain. And next, I would like to introduce Professor Taehyun Kim from Graduate School of Public Health of Yonsei University for his presentation. Please welcome him with a big hand.
예, 감사합니다.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Kim Tae-hyun, professor at the Healthcare Management Graduate School of Public Health at Yonsei University. Today, I will talk about smart healthcare and how it can contribute to international cooperation, especially as emerging nations are trying to overcome various challenges in the healthcare areas. Low level of healthcare services or lack of healthcare resources. So how smart healthcare can help them overcome these challenges to upgrade the overall performance of their healthcare systems. So I would like to briefly go over the definition of smart healthcare and then talk about some of the common challenges that many emerging countries face and share some key examples and how smart healthcare can support some of the projects with some case examples. There is a contingency here. I will also make some suggestions about future cooperation. Smart healthcare in conventional or traditional healthcare, we can add ICT, information and communication technology, to healthcare to facilitate various healthcare services. And it also includes personalized healthcare services, and it also can reduce a lot of inefficiencies with ICT technologies, and it can also enhance physical access for patients or financial access to patients as well. And it can also improve the quality of healthcare services. As for the definition and depth of smart healthcare, there are a variety of scenarios, and the definition of smart health continues to evolve. And the major parts include telehealthcare services and then smart watches or wearable devices using mobile health applications to help people to manage their health better. And then another pillar could be health analytics, because there have been efforts to systematically analyze the big data in healthcare area to predict future illnesses and then generally help people to prevent illnesses. And precision medicine is also an important part of this. Many new hospitals are carrying out smart projects, introducing 5G technology in the hospital so that physicians and the healthcare professionals can exchange and share the health data more quickly so that it can enable faster and more accurate services to the patients. And many developing countries share similar issues and challenges in healthcare sector. There is this iron triangle in healthcare. Many countries around the world share challenges in quality of healthcare services and having the appropriate level of cost and pricing and providing easier access to patients for healthcare services. These are common challenges for many emerging countries, and many emerging countries suffer from at least one or two of these three triangles. This iron triangle, in order to improve on any one of these, they need to sacrifice one or two part of this iron triangle. But if you use smart or digital technology, you have a better chance of not sacrificing too much on the other side in order to improve on one of these triangles. So in healthcare services, this can improve the overall quality of healthcare services. So if we can make the best use of digital technology, this will definitely facilitate the provisioning of better services to many patients. And then I will talk about knowledge sharing and development cooperation of major donors and international organizations. Over the past 3 years, the entire world has been locked down because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And COVID-19 reminds us of offline, non-face-to-face interactions. And the biggest challenge to going non-face-to-face is found in healthcare services. But in this process, if the physician and patients come into contact, this will increase the possibility of infection. So UN has introduced the smart quarantine robot to minimize the contact or interaction between people. And many countries share this problem of accessibility. So there is a project for developing network for telemedicine. And there are other healthcare challenges besides COVID-19. There are some long-lasting problems and challenges, including maternal and child health cares. Especially, there are countries with high rates of mortality for young infants and mothers. So if the diagnostics test can be done on site, this will improve the overall performance of these services. And WHO has been operating remote counseling centers in this regard. And malaria is attacking many problems around the world. And malaria control can also be done on remote basis. What is encouraging these days is for 33 countries and 3 international organizations, they participated in an international collaboration project to look for ways to promote more effective international cooperation. Let me share Korea's experience with you. Korea is a powerhouse for digital technology, and it currently provides quite high level of healthcare services. So in terms of smart healthcare, Korea can help or make contribution in promoting digital healthcare international collaboration. But there are 7 challenges that must be resolved beforehand. This is related to overall sense of direction and regulations in Korea, either to deregulate or to resolve that with legislations. These are the challenges that Korea must overcome. And domestically, for accessibility, quality of services, cost, these are challenges that need to be overcome. And through such smart healthcare initiatives, we can enhance accessibility for patients who are living in islands or other remote areas of the country, and it can be used for treating chronic illness patients. And we can cooperate with emerging countries around the world for smart healthcare program implementation. And there are multiple projects going on in this regard. Last but not least, in cooperating with other countries, I would like to suggest the following 3 areas for international collaboration. First is to expand usage of telemedicine services between patient and physicians. Second area for international collaboration could be using mobile apps, because we use smartphones all the time to gain various informations and services. So by using mobile applications, we can improve healthcare services quality and allow patients to have access to better medical services. Third, we could introduce e-learning platform or mobile learning platform to educate patients and healthcare staff. Thank you very much for your attention.
Very much, Professor Kim. Thank you for introducing smart healthcare, which can contribute to the cooperation with developing countries. Thank you. So from now on, we're going to have in-depth discussion based on topics that we have covered in the previous 2 sessions. This roundtable discussion will be moderated by Mr. Jung-Woo Kim, Executive Director of the Center for International Development from the Korea Development Institute. And also we have a very distinguished panel of experts. So without further ado, I would like to turn the session over to Mr. Kim. Sir, please.
Good morning. Thank you. And it's always happy to see the last session of the long day. Anyhow, we discussed about the crisis from the pandemic or economic turmoils over the globe and the war between some important countries. So we required some kind of digitalization or pursuing the greenness in projects or programs and even policies to take care of those challenges. So digitalization was pursued to enhance productivity, but there is some missing link with the digitalization and green. However, international cooperation requires kind of to find out the missing link between digitalization and green, so that we can have green ODA or to boost up the digitalization, facilitate the green or digital or green, those important agendas, aspects of the activities. So we have 3 prominent expertise on green and digital, and their name have already prevailed before their presence in here. However, we'd like to introduce firstly Ms. Director Ji-young Choi. She is going to present some green ODA perspective, and then you can share some ideas on greening the ODA or greener ODA in specific areas. Please.
Hello, everyone. I was just introduced. I am Director Choi Ji-young of the Economic Cooperation and Planning Divisions of the Foreign Economic Bureau of the Ministry of Strategy and Finance. Thank you very much for inviting me today. Ministry of Finance and Economy, we carry out KSP project, knowledge sharing program, and all the presentation made by other speakers once again emphasize how important it is to international cooperation, and I believe that those presentation provided us a foundation. On top of the presentation, I'd like to continue the discussion focusing on KSP, a representative development and economic cooperation project carried out by the ministry. In the midst of the recent global economic uncertainty, green and digital transition is accepted as a solution to overcome the economic crisis, an essential element of sustainable development. You know that we use in our daily lives, such as financial, mobility, messenger service, public administration. Everything is actually based on digitalization. ESG goes beyond just carrying out the social responsibility, but actually it means things that we must do it. So digital green trend that we cannot go back. It's once again clearly shown in the demand for the KSP business. As introduced, KSP conducted by the Ministry of Strategy and Finance, it is a program that finds solutions to the challenges of the partner countries based on Korea's experience. Recently, in response to the climate crisis, demand for the policy advice on greenhouse gas reduction, circular economy, disaster overcoming, and demand for the digital fields such as the smart city, digital health, digital finance, and e-government are rapidly increasing. Regarding the digital cooperation, once again, ICT-driven development through the KSP cooperation model in the fields where Korea's strength, such as digital education, agriculture, health, and government service introduced by the ADBI, Dean Tetsushi Sonobu has already talked about it. Now, as it was widely known, Korea is an IPA powerhouse. And today I'd like to introduce you Korea's climate change response policies and system, advanced technology and know-how. And based on this, how we can come up with the directions for the knowledge sharing cooperation program. First, the climate change response policy. Let me introduce that. Korean government has been very active in responding to the climate change, not regarding this as a cost or burden, but rather we regarded this as an opportunity to create a new economic growth. In 2011, the framework for Act on Low Carbon Green Growth was enacted. In 2012, the Greenhouse Gas and Energy Target Management System was implemented. In 2014, Greenhouse Gas Reduction Roadmap was established. Efforts such as implementations of the emission trading system was established in 2015. Following the Paris Agreement signed in 2015, the international community is working hard going through the 2021, the COP26 meeting, that we have promised to make efforts to once again curb the temperature increase below 1.5 degrees. In line with that, Korean government has become the 14th country to preemptively enact 2050 carbon neutrality. At COP 2016, we pledged to reduce greenhouse gas emission by 40% compared to 2018. To this end, the Korean government is maximizing efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emission in all sectors such as industry, building, transportation, livestock, and fishery domestically. Let me dive deeper into the policy that Korean government is taking to promote the carbon neutral investment by companies and low carbon consumption by the people. Incentives such as the strengthening policy finance support and payment of the carbon neutral practice points have been prepared. The foundations of the circular economy is built, such as recycling of the waste plastic, waste batteries, and also we are building a system to respond to the climate change, such as improving ESG disclosure system and creating ESG ecosystem. However, given the industrial structure of Korea, which is developed mainly in the manufacturing industry, Korea's 2050 carbon neutrality is not an easy goal. Perhaps reducing greenhouse gas emission is considered a more difficult task for developing countries in various stages of development. However, under such situation, especially the climate crisis, with the appropriate technology and green policies, I strongly believe that it can work as a driving force for economic growth. Therefore, Korea's experience will be very helpful as Korea supports KSP, and KSP is aimed at responding to the climate crisis in partner countries. While supporting policy and strategy formulation, we provide technical support and opportunity for capacity building in process of the policy implementation. KSP is not just about sharing knowledge, but as a follow-up project, we provide diverse investment by the private companies. It is used as a means to promote economic cooperation between the countries. Through KSP business, we have supported green economy transformations of the following partner countries. We provide advices on sustainable solid waste management for Laos in 2020. We are reviewing loan support for follow-up project, and also we provide advices on measures to improve flood and drought management and forecast and warnings to the Mekong River Committee in 2021. As a follow-up project, we plan to launch KSP this year to improve flood and drought management based on the big data and AI. In addition, by providing advice on improving sewage management policies for the preservation of the nature reserve in Mexico 2021. Based on this, Mexican Ministry of Cooperation, Law, Institutional Modernizations, and System improvements are in progress. progress. Korean government has recently prepared a strategy for promoting international greenhouse gas reduction project. Let me briefly introduce that. Through various carbon reduction projects with the partner countries, domestic companies with the carbon reduction technology is actively taking part in the KSP, which supports the partner countries in establishing systems and infrastructure. Until now, for partner countries' green economy transportation, Korean government has been actively taking part in, and I have explained to you what kind of KSP projects that Ministry of Strategy and Finance is implementing it. And as Sonobe mentioned, he emphasized the importance of the capacity building and international cooperation, which is lacking, which I totally agree. Through KSP, we hope to work closer in the green sector or in coming up with a strategy and also in capacity building. We plan to actively take part in that. Based on the discussions that we had today, we will try to explore new KSP ideas and we'll actively work with the partners so that we can support their programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Chair. So the next, our discussant is Ms. Randy Munk, the counselor at the Embassy of Denmark in our country. So she is going to discuss about the digital healthcare, which is kind of good example of digitalization in daily life, not just economy or environment. However, our daily life is so related and digitalization is important in maintaining and sustaining our health problems. So please.
Thank you. And thank you very much for inviting me today, speaking on this very important topic. I can start by saying that I agree with Professor Kim in many of the points he made. Digitalization is so important within the healthcare sector, but we also have a lot of challenges, especially when it comes to the emerging countries, where the infrastructure is not as good as it is in the Western countries and in Korea and some of the more developed Asian countries. So that is definitely one of the challenges. So to begin with, I can mention that the United Nations have an e-government survey every year where they look at different achievements within public digitalization. And for the past 3 years, Denmark has been awarded the first place out of the 193 member countries. And the public digitalization is a very big thing in Denmark, and the public healthcare sector is a very big part of that. The infrastructure we have in Denmark is critical, and I can mention an example. For example, the COVID handling. The pandemic really showed us the importance of having a solid infrastructure. When the first COVID cases were detected in Denmark back in February 2020, we had no pandemic preparedness in the healthcare sector whatsoever. There was nothing in place. But we had a very strong infrastructure, and within 2 months, we could use our data to monitor PCR tests. We could use the public registers on healthcare data to make sure that we were detecting and monitoring COVID-19 patients. But one thing is digital transformation in Denmark. A very different thing is digital transformation in the emerging countries. So transferring this knowledge to the emerging countries is going to be a very different challenge. The healthcare sector is facing global challenges at the moment with aging, the antimicrobial resistance, low fertility, chronic diseases. These topics are a global challenge for all of us, so it makes sense that we do this global collaboration as well. So even though solutions needed for these different disease areas are different, then the technology on different scales can be a common denominator that could help us all. And coming back to the pandemic, it has really shown us that in this world where people travel from country to country in an unprecedented rate, it really makes it important for us to make sure that all healthcare systems are up to par and we make ourselves ready to face another pandemic. So it makes sense to work together to raise the bar for healthcare systems globally. Coming back to the infrastructure. For the low-income countries, one of the challenges we're really facing when Denmark goes out and try to assist, for example, as we do in Africa, the infrastructure in some places, they don't even have sufficient Wi-Fi. So the solutions on smartphones, apps, and just remote consultations can be very, very difficult. So we need a differentiated approach to the different countries. In order to talk about digitalization, we have to talk about infrastructure and make sure we have a solid base to discuss digitalization from. Because if we just send smart solutions to these countries without sufficient infrastructure, it's not really going to make a difference for them. So I think that's one of the key points, that we have to make sure that infrastructure are up to scale. And then another thing that Professor Kim also mentioned in one of his points, the digital literacy of the people, the digital education that they have is very, very different. In Denmark, we are seeing how the elderly patients, 70 plus, are using remote consultations in an increasing level. But this will not be the case in the emerging countries. So there will be a need to do more education within these IT solutions. Not everybody is data savvy, and some of these solutions would also create some discomfort for the patients. If they're not used to handling IT in their approach to the healthcare system, this can be very insecure for them. So that's also a thing that we have to face when we talk about these global challenges within the healthcare sector. And then, of course, for policy and legislation, there's also many things to look upon when we look at different countries that are ready for digital transformation, and we talk about using health data and big data. We also have to talk about data safety. We have to talk about patient privacy, which is one of the key elements. For the emerging countries, the good thing is that many of their systems are not fully developed yet, so they actually have a chance to learn from all of us who already have systems, and not to make as many mistakes as we have when we come to data safety and legislation. In Denmark, the legislation is always behind the technology development. That's just the name of the game when you talk about legislation. And of course, we're working within both the Danish and the European framework. And for the emerging countries, the legal process just have to start really, really early. Because these issues are very challenging, and the technology is just changing so rapidly that we need the right policies to follow this. And then, of course, coming back to one of the key elements in this debate, sustainability and climate is also very important when we look upon the healthcare sector, both within recycling, green production methods, pharmaceutical production. There is a lot of climate issues that is not being addressed at the moment. For low and middle income countries, this might not be first on the agenda because they have so many other healthcare challenges to face. But it's really important that we address it on a global scale, because it's going to affect us all. The climate changes are real, and if the pharmaceutical industry and healthcare systems are not really dealing with this already from the beginning, it's going to create a lot of challenges, especially for the emerging countries, who are some of those who are most affected by these climate changes. So if we can work together, who knows what we can achieve on a global scale in reducing waste, using smart technology. So I would really advocate for addressing these global health challenges on a global collaborative scale, across borders, across sectors, applying our knowledge within smart tech, and strengthen the collaboration between public and private partners. The public sector in Denmark is already collaborating extensively with private partners, and it's because we realize that we have a lot of skills in the public sector, but we also need the private partners to really get into depth with the technology and make sure that we don't miss out of any opportunities. So if we can lift these partnerships to a global scale, then I see that we can help the emerging countries' healthcare systems much more effectively than just being one country going out and doing these initiatives. Yeah, so with that, I'll just say let's continue the collaboration, and I really appreciate you addressing this very important topic today. Thank you. 감사합니다.
Thank you, Ms. Munk. So I'd like to introduce our third discussant, Professor Sung-Kyu Kim. He is acting as a president of Korea Association of International Development and Cooperation. So far, some discussion or presentation on digital or green are somewhat fragmented, and some of the argument is kind of immature yet. However, green or digital, those things are not standalone. That means we need kind of consolidated way to discuss and extend our cooperations toward the sustainability or toward the better quality of the life, of course. So digitalization will be able to catalyze or facilitate green or greener ODA or activities in the economy and society. Also, environmental problems necessitate and requires digitalization or digital transformation in timely manner. So those things can be achieved with the international cooperation. So I think Professor Kim is the guy who can address those issues and suggest some recommendations on those issues. Please.
Thank you. 감사합니다. 예.
Thank you very much, moderator. I am Kim Sung-kyu, President of Korea Association of International Development and Cooperation. So we are dealing with a very timely subject here, and I would like to thank KDI for giving me the invitation to be here. So I have heard all the presentations and comments, and digital, green, all the important keywords are mentioned. And standardization was mentioned, as well as smart healthcare in the healthcare sector, and how digital and green should go together. Green is mentioned as an important value for development cooperation, and ESG, SDG are becoming highly relevant. When we look at Korea, ASEAN context, and also Asia-Pacific context, there are different issues for each region, and legislation issues for Korea were also mentioned. Personally, I am very much interested in global value chain, and I was very glad to hear about that. In development cooperation, global value chain is emerging as an important topic. And today, I would like to talk about green digital economy, and it has become an important value, especially during the pandemic. And I would like to make a comment about sustainability and effectiveness of development cooperation for green digital economy. I would like to propose certain directions. The keywords, I have prepared about 5 keywords. First is integrated approach, which is a new methodology that is emerging in development cooperation. Next is partnership, which is related to building ecosystem. So that is my second keyword. My third keyword is how green digital cooperation can be measured, and I would like to briefly talk about statistical approach for that. Fourth would be green digitalization brand. That is one of the key pillars of the new administration. Fifth, I would like to talk about localization of green and digital. This is related to communication structure. regarding integrated approach. In this global cooperation context, this is mainly about the effectiveness of cooperation for development and combination of different sectors, but the overall direction is to improve the effectiveness of development cooperation. In the past, some of these activities were quite fragmented. To overcome this problem, we need to introduce a new method of working as emphasized by the United Nations. So we need to go for mid to longer term programs and focus on introducing packages for specific countries. So we need new methodologies for development and cooperation. And they really need to fulfill the needs of emerging countries. Therefore, green digital economy need to be combined in a manner that can organically resolve and fulfill the combined needs of emerging countries. And various actors need to work together for development cooperation. Stakeholders, know-how, or expertise, and the structure of funding and the execution of funding all then needs to be converged together to establish one single effective governance. But this is actually a very challenging and daunting task. Digital ICT sectors or expertise, and not just the digital as a keyword, but various stakeholders, how they come together in an integrated manner has to be decided. And next is partnership issue and social innovation of emerging countries are related to the values of digital and green economy. Donor countries are not just transferring their own values to emerging nations. So public-private partnership would be critical. And Korea is carrying out IDP projects. And these projects are aiming for social innovation, and this requires expertise of private sector. Under such circumstances, the partnership between public and private sectors need to be strengthened in a way that combines the expertise of private sector. And for digital convergence project, multilateral cooperation or international organizations have a lot of knowledge and effective networks, so we need to look for ways to collaborate with them. And I only have 3 minutes, so I need to hurry up. Green digital, how we are going to measure and statistically analyze green digital development cooperation. In line with the changes in the environment and environmental structure, we need to measure and define the new direction for development cooperation and introduce statistical concepts in this endeavor. These days, we are introducing this concept of total official support for sustainable development. And also, I would like to move on to developing brand for green and digital development cooperation. Korea has know-how for ICT-based digital transformation, and we need to reflect the competitiveness or unique characteristics of Korea in our ODA programs. We need to create our own brand and emphasize that. For example, in terms of environment and climate change, we have a lot of expertise in disposing of the waste, reforestation, greening of our environment. So we need to develop a brand that reflects Korea's characteristics or strength in these areas. Last but not least, I would like to talk about localization. The need for localization cannot be emphasized too much. The values for green digital economy that Korea has should be able to fulfill the requirements of emerging nations in terms of their legislative, cultural, economic context. So this should be based on the context and requirements of the emerging countries. And ICT and digitalization are indispensable part of helping emerging countries. And there should be overall directions and vision proposed, and this should go hand in hand for infrastructure development and skill development programs. And the key word for digitalization in our case is to pursue mid to long-term economic and national development of our partner countries. And it's a very important value for international development cooperation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we got some kind of important pillars for international cooperation in green and digital areas. And so far, we focus on the policy recommendation in the public side, but he stressed out that private sector or partnership with the private engagement is so crucial in developing and pursuing greenness or digitalization. Of course, green economy or greening industry requires digitalization, and digitalization can be kind of influencer or the entire economic activities or daily life. But we mentioned that digital healthcare, but digital healthcare for our planet is, I think, greening our planet or greening the industry for our for improving our daily life as well. So those important agendas should be pursued, but not just standalone way. Rather, it's joint research, joint work, joint homework, even for the expertise and general citizens. So thank you for the discussion, and I'd like to invite a couple of questions, or we can go to the lunchtime, and then you can share some ideas freely. So it depends upon the schedule. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kim and all the panelists. Please give them another big round of applause. Thank you. So that brings us to the end of 2022 KDI Global Forum. Once again, we would like to send our gratitude to all the distinguished guest speakers and panelists for sharing your invaluable insights and staying with us till the very end of the forum. We wish that today's forum was useful and insightful and helpful to all of you. We wish to meet you once again next year, and that's all from me. Thank you.